Let's talk defensive players and their films, Brian, because that's where I think the class is going to continue to grow the most. Like offensively, with 2 running backs, 3 receivers, a quarterback, and a couple offensive linemen, it's a not completely full offensive recruiting class for Oregon, but it is certainly more full than it is on the defensive side of the ball. We'll have some defensive updates coming later in this segment as well. But let's start with Josiah Sharma. This is a guy who looked like he was going to Texas. I had a buddy who's a Texas fan feeling very confident that they were going to land Josiah Sharma. And then Oregon, Tosh Lupo and Dan Lanning just came and snatched him out. Tony Tuioti all did a great job there as always. When I look at Sharma, I see really quick hands and a guy who, could maybe slim down a bit or could bulk up and be Jordan Scott. Definitely someone that plays on the interior, though. What stands out to you about his film?
Just how wide he is. I was thinking this could be a 325 guy that plays some zero tech. There's a lot of ways he could do it, but he's pretty agile for his size. I don't know what you thought, but I'm like, okay, he's got a swim move. He tries to play one gap and get up the field. I was a little surprised when I saw him like in his stance. I'm like, okay, this is going to be a power guy, take on a couple blockers, mug it up a little bit. No, he was up the field. I was impressed, and I didn't know that he could be that consistent with it because a few of the plays, they ran screens, which is smart against D linemen like him. You're not going to beat him up, obviously, but he would turn immediately and go find the football. He hustles. Most kids 300 pounds are not real friendly with the screen game. They don't like it much because they don't want to run that far. He didn't care. So that much size, that much athleticism, and that much want to, it's kind of hard not to like this kid. He's a national recruit.
Yeah, 6'5", 295 pounds is what he's listed at right now. I think when you have that much height, you could make an argument, well, slim down by 30 pounds, and suddenly you're a Brandon Dorless hybrid type where you play defensive end and you play defensive tackle. I agree with what you said. I think his body type, he is incredibly wide. He just feels like someone that takes up a lot of space. I'm interested to see how, the strength and power he does have translates to the college level. Because like you said, a lot of his highlights are him having really, really quick hands, which is awesome because when you find that from interior defensive linemen, that makes them very disruptive. But I was kind of curious that typically a guy of that size, you would think his number one attribute would be power, and he also shows the hands, but like he looks very quick off the ball to me. And then, he's not the most agile, but he's not slow when he's, guarding in the screen game and whatnot. But I think that's a guy who you could actually put on 15 to 20 pounds and have him be just a true run-stuffing defensive tackle.
How many guys do you know that are big body guys that are already 290 will want to swim down?
290 want to swim down? I don't know any personally.
Yeah, let me tell you something. The people that suggest that oftentimes end up in a closet, okay? He's not going to be losing weight. All right, that's not how this works. Guys that big, stay big. He's going to play interior. He'll play D-end on the goal line maybe because he's a freak athlete, but he's a big dude that needs to play inside. Don't hide what it is. He's got an NFL frame. Legitimately, he's got an NFL frame. The width of that man's shoulders is not normal. I don't know. I don't pay attention to everyone. I'm like, man, that is really wide. And that just means girth, which means more weight. He's going to be 315 conservatively. And based on his athleticism, good for him. Oregon has done as good a job of recruiting D linemen as any program in the country not named. Fill in the blank. Which one do you think I'm going to say?
Georgia.
That's right.
Yeah.
So they're right there with everybody else, though. And getting the kid that Texas wants. I don't know if you know this, but PFF had the 2 tackles at Texas last year, 1-2 in the nation.
Yep, I haven't seen that.
So that's a good sign. Okay, Texas knows what they're doing with D tackles. This is a good football player. And somebody, I know Oregon's got depth, but if he didn't play by his sophomore year, I'd be surprised. I don't like freaking freshmen to play at D tackle, but as a sophomore, sure, I could see it.
Yeah, I think he's someone that I wouldn't expect to play in 2025 either, but in 2026, yeah, I think that's someone
Sure.
who's going to have an opportunity at the very least to be a part of the mix. I do wonder if the one exception to that defensive tackle rule is Aiden Breland. I mean, like
Oh,
that,
he's
like
an
that.
animal. That is
Yeah,
an animal.
I think he at the defensive tackle
He's got to
spot.
play some, right? Like
I
a
would
little.
I would think so. I would think so. Now the defensive line is ridiculously deep. They have two transfers who are starters, Jamari Caldwell and Derek Harmon, both really good football players. But then after that, Ben Roberts transferred out after having a nice spring game, and Keonware Hudson is still in there. But then, you got to go 4, 5, or 6 deep on the interior of the defensive line, and I think Breland will have a chance to get in there. Let's also talk about Dorian Brew, because this is the name that most stood out to me amongst this flurry of recruitments that I knew who he was. I knew Oregon and had him on campus for a visit. This was the most surprising of the four. Davison, Brame, Sharma, and Brew. This one came the most out of left field for me. He was expected to go to Ohio State. They have a bunch of other defensive backs highly rated in the 2025 class committed. What do you make of Dorian Brew?
Two things. Number one, he's lived in multiple states, but Ohio State, everybody thought that's where he was going to go. He lived in Ohio. However, they don't have the number one corner committed in their class. They've got the top 2 in the nation. I'm going to go out on a limb because his film is him all playing corner pretty much. He wants to go somewhere he's going to be the guy, which I don't blame him. And while he's good, he's not as good as those 2 guys. And that's my guess. And Oregon, good for them. They don't care where a kid's from anymore. Like, it just doesn't matter. They just need his address to send him stuff. That's it. And they figure out the rest. Like, their recruiting is wild. They got a kid that nobody thought, myself included. Like, I was on the Ohio State podcast the other day. Like, what's going on? I'm like, you tell me. So they don't lose DBs very often that have lived in Ohio. Okay. But at the same time, long-bodied kid. He's got some good feet. He's very physical at the line. I don't think he's a burner. And I think his best spot might be the nickel spot because he just really likes contact. But that's a player that Oregon can use in some capacity. He could probably play safety and have no problems with it. I think Oregon got a steal.
Do you think that he is most well suited to play the nickel spot, or that's just where he might end up playing? Because, his film breakdown per the 24/7 Sports Analysis put him as a boundary corner because of the way I think that he just kind of stays glued to receivers and uses the sideline as an extra defender really, really well. But is this someone that Oregon fans should look at and consider coming in essentially as an athlete, but as a defensive back, and you can put him here, you can put him there, or you can put him over there? Or is it corner preferred, but if necessary, or if the depth chart shakes out this way or that way, he could wind up playing safety or nickel?
It's a little bit difficult to say for sure because boundary corner, there's nowhere to hide. If you play that spot, you're on an island.
Yep.
And like when my guy Jay for Ohio State's lined up at boundary, and he will, nobody's going to want to be that guy in front of it. They won't admit that on TV. You better be a dude because you're going to get mossed.
Yeah, the last 2 corners for Oregon that have been the boundary corners, Christian Gonzalez, 1st round, Kyrie Jackson, 4th round. Like, that's typically your number 1 corner.
Yeah, because, there's just not much way to help them. Because everybody runs like 3 guys to the wide side of the field. You got to put your safety help that direction. You're on an island. I don't know if Brew has the pure speed to take on the guys that run 4.4 and sub 4.4, but at the same time, he is physical and he's very technical. So he could play multiple spots, but like the competition he was playing on the film I watched, he was just murdering guys. These aren't South Florida kids. This isn't Houston competition that I was like normally think of. It was hard to grade it, but long arms, has some physical tendencies that in the run game most corners don't. But that's also what got me thinking about nickel, and that's okay because that's even a harder spot to play. Because sometimes you got to take on a tight end, and that's never good for a DB. But he's willing to do it. If you're Oregon, you figure it out when you get him on campus. That's the bottom line. So I think Oregon got a good football player. I just don't know exactly how I would use him yet.